So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about how the structure of PDF template editor works with the dynamic data that you're pulling from your Katana database. And I'll be doing an example in this one with creating a packing list for a sales order that actually has barcodes on it. And I want to cover the use case for tables and also the use case for containers. These are two very important things that you'll come across in the future if you start making your own custom PDF templates. And how they work is very important to understand in order for you to be successful using this. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll start off with creating our first print template with barcodes on it. So to do that, go to the packing list option. We'll choose duplicate to make that version, and then this will open up the editor. Let's go ahead and give it a new name, and we'll call this packing list with barcodes. Okay. So really kind of the use case where this would work is if you are going to print out a barcode document from a sales order or from a shipping portion of a sales order, and you want to provide barcodes so that way when your receiver or your customer is receiving it, they can use those barcodes to scan in when they're doing a count and counting that inventory that's coming from the receiving department. So it's just one use case that it could be handy for, but there are plenty that you can come up with. Now, talking a little bit more in detail, I want to start off with tables. Since I'm not going to be covering tables in this particular demo, I want to just give an overview of what they do and how they work. So tables are more or less, from a simplified perspective, you'll have repeating rows in a sales order. So if you have a sales order that has one line item in it, you'll get a printed out packing list with maybe one line item in it. If you've got a sales order that's being shipped out and it's got 50 items in it, then you'll print out one that has 50 lines in it. So the way that tables work with respect to the PDF editor is that tables will repeat information over time. So when you're using it, the default templates already have this element in it, so you actually don't really need to do much with it, but I just want to explain in the details of how it's working. When you select that table here, for example, you can see that there's some content inside of it that says sales order rows attributes and batch transactions block, for example. Now what that means is if you have a sales order row, which is one row of data, and you've got, let's say, an array of 50 rows of data, which would be 50 line items, then this would pop up 50 times within a new row in that table for every single instance of it occurring on that sales order. The same would also apply for any batch transactions that are being associated with that line item. So it's very, very important to understand how that works. And that data that's being pulled into here on the default templates actually is coming from an HTML that we've already pre-programmed for you. Quantity section over here, when you look closely at it, you can see that there is a data field with quantity and unit of measure. Now, what this is referencing is the line item property from your Katana database, and that line item property has a quantity for that sales order, and it also has a unit of measure that's associated with that quantity for that item. And when you're looking closer at the details, you can insert data fields directly from your database that's been specified in order to add additional information into those sections. So for example, if you're editing the data that's going to be inside of this cell block, then you can select insert data field and pull it from your list. And then this information will repeat every time you have a sales order with the PDF template generated in order to capture that attribute in every instance that it occurs. That should give you a general overview of how it works. I won't go into the details of making one because I actually have to delete this table in order to show you the next thing. Now, I have a full video series on barcode scanning, which talks all about the PDF template editor, especially when it comes to label creation. So please feel free to check that part out when it comes to barcode section of the advanced features in the tutorial series. But for now, we'll go ahead and do it with using a container. So talking about the container functionality inside of the PDF template editor, I'll go ahead and remove this specific block of data first and bring that up there. A container is basically an area where you're going to be putting data that's being received from your Katana database anytime the new document is generated. And the point of the container is to point in the correct direction where to extrapolate that information. So let's say I'll go ahead and put my container in, and it will pop up as a little box like so in this area. And I'll drag it down and resize it to where I want to have it. Now, for a packing list that I want to put barcodes on, for example, I need to put this information inside of that container space. And that container space will incorporate and include all of that information. So for starters, I'll click on the container item itself, and then here to the right where we have all of the components that are related to it, what we want to do is select from the data fields where we're going to extrapolate information from. So when we're talking about sales orders, we're actually going to be pulling sales order information. And that sales order information would be related to sales order row groups. And going deeper into that information here, we'll select sales order rows. Now, once this is selected, then anytime I'm adding a component from, let's say, the text box section inside of that container, then that will be the location where we're going to extrapolate data from for that sales order. Remember, this is a sales order specific document, so we want to pull sales order specific data. That's why I chose sales order rows as our source of data. Now, sales order rows, let's go ahead and use that as the base, and that should look good for starters. Everything else here will remain the same since we're using a pre-existing default template. What I want to do next is I want to go in here and add a text box. And let's get some like basic formatting out of the way. For this text box, I'm going to add something like, we will put item inside of the information here. I can type item. Maybe I can make it bold. And that looks pretty good. Don't need to add any data for this field, but there is an insert data field. So we'll choose apply. And that should be good to go. I'll keep it here and I'll space it nicely. The next thing I would want to do is I would want to put the quantity. So for example, I can take this same text box and bring in another one. And I'll resize it to B. I'm going to move it over a little bit further into a quantity field, like so, since the item names can be quite long. And we'll get into some details about how we want to display that information. You could do something where you have the item, the quantity, and then the barcode, which is what we're going to do in this example. But for example, if you want to break it out even further, you could have the item name and the SKU. Then you could have the quantity and the barcode. However you want to do it, you can also include batch numbers if you wish. It's up to you. But there's plenty of different ways to work with that type of data. So once we've got that squared away, we'll move on to the next one, which will be quantity. I'm not going to add any data to that, but we'll just make it bold. So it will be a heading and choose apply. And then that's pretty much it. I'll go ahead and put one more here, which will include barcode. Now, if you want to know what the size of this is and you need to look at the properties, you can see that the height of this is 0.42. So maybe I want to go inside of here and make this one 0.42 as well. So you can use some of those different types of tools in order to better facilitate how you're sizing, let's say, your text boxes. So here I'm just going to put barcode and make it bold. Choose apply. Okay, that's it. Pretty straightforward. Now, next thing I want to do is using the same type of method pulling in a text field, I want to add data layers to it. So I'll take a text box, I'll drag it into the container. Remember, the container is looking to the sales order rows. And inside of here, before we get to the quantity, I'm actually going to move this quantity over just a wee bit like that. And looks good. So next thing I want to do here is actually insert a data field. So when I click on it and choose insert data field, I want to include some things that are specific to that packing list. This will include, let's find item name. I'll choose item variant name because it is more specific. And then we'll select add. And maybe what we'll want to do from there is put a space and then add an additional data field, which will include the item SKU, which will be here. And we'll choose add. Okay, and that should be it. Nice and simple. And we'll hit apply. And then next thing is we'll create another text box and put quantity. And in the quantity text box, what we'll want to do is enter the information which is the quantity for that row. So as you can see, here's a quantity section. We'll choose that and select insert data field. And then that will pull up the quantity that is for that specified item. And then here to the right, we'll generate a barcode for that item. So to generate a barcode, we'll select the barcode option and then bring it into this section here. I'm going to make a more wide style barcode. Okay, great. And you can use different types of barcode styles all along here. GS128 is a pretty popular one, but we'll just leave it as it is. And then once you have it, you can do things like show the text related to it underneath, for example. And then what we also have to do is insert a data field that's the specific barcode for that item. Internal barcode is the one you would want to use, and so we would place that there. And then choose insert data field, and there we go. So if you need to, you can make the spacing a little bit more convenient if it is required for the needs of this item. And that's it. So we have created a packing list that will list the name, the SKU, the quantity, as well as the barcode anytime you're packing up an order that you're shipping out. I'll move this a little bit more centered. And so now your customer, when you generate a document on that, will be able to scan it when that shipment is received by them. So let's go ahead and save this. And then put it to use. All right, so heading back into the settings, what we want to make sure next is to make this PDF template visible by choosing the checkbox here. And once that is ready, we can then print out our packing list with barcodes. So taking one of these examples, we can take, let's say, the sales order number 6, which you see has 4 items in it. And when we choose the print icon and select packing list with barcodes, then this will generate a PDF for us, which will contain the item name, the quantity for that item, as well as the barcode. Now, of course, like it is with anything, since I'm recording this live, you might have to go back and make some edits or test things around a little bit better to see how it works best for your needs. For example, what I might want to do is remove the headers on each one of these items and just put in the data field. So there's a couple of things to think about when you're putting this together. Anyhow, I hope that this video series has given you a nice little overview of how to use PDF template editor and how the certain elements within it work, as well as work for your different documents. And of course, if you always have any questions that might come up when you're messing about and working with it, please feel free to pass them over to our support team. Folks over there be more than happy to help you. Okay, thank you and good luck.